It feels a little strange to be saying this in October, but welcome to the Total 24 Hours of Spa. This ever-changing COVID world in which we live means that a date that is normally at the end of July is now in October. And although the sun is shining, and actually today we probably enjoyed better weather than we did in the summer last year for the showpiece race within what is GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS, and a round of Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. And the cars have had free practice. We're about to get pre-qualifying underway, ready for qualifying in 4 elements later on, and then of course from 8:30 to 5:10, I should say, there will be the night practice itself. It's going to be a very different feel to the race this year. No fans are allowed. The manufacturers don't have their big hospitality areas. The atmosphere feels somewhat different. However, we're going to have a lot more dark running. We're going to have cooler temperatures perhaps, and it should all add up to be a fantastic race, one that's going to be absolutely full of challenges for the teams. David Addison and John Watson looking forward to not only a great race, Watty, but also to this first chance for us to see the cars on track, and also to have a look at what is, as ever, really a stellar entry list.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, looking at the weather right now, I hate talking first thing about weather, but absolutely perfect track temperature, ambient temperature for these cars to go. Another massive field. Have to say the most popular manufacturer this weekend happened to be my favourite manufacturer. They won last year, and they're on track as we speak. Porsche
here with a real intent. I mean, last year, as we saw, Porsche came and conquered. It was a Porsche that won the last Endurance Cup round, of course, at the Nürburgring. But, John, you look at that entry list that Porsche has brought, and it's a quality lineup. They're all manufacturer drivers. These guys are not here on holiday. Porsche means business, doesn't it?
Well, certainly if you've got the volume of cars in this race that they have, plus the car that won last year, the GPX Porsche in those Gulf colours, they're going to be very hard to beat. But there's an indication of what we're saying. Look at the number of leaves on the racetrack. Now, nobody ever thinks about leaves on a racetrack, but that's potentially a problematic area for some teams, maybe for all the teams, because that will get into your air intakes, get into your brake cooling intakes. Will that cause a problem for any one of these teams here over the weekend, or will by the time everybody gets on track, they've been blown to the hills and the forests around the Ardennes?
Let me just throw something else into the melting pot here, and it's been something that teams and Pirelli have been discussing, and that is that if you're in the bottom pits, the endurance pits, John, are you going to have an advantage when you go into your stint? The reason behind that is that you are straight out on track, so your tyres are not going cold, whereas if you're in the Formula 1 pit, you've got a longer drive down the pit lane. It's a longer period from putting the new tyres on to being able to start to work them, whereas if you can go straight out on tyres that haven't lost too much temperature, your outlap should be pretty good, shouldn't it?
I think you're right. I mean, I always favour being the last pit unit in the pit lane. We saw it 2 weekends ago in Barcelona when WRT were the team that were at the very end of the pit lane, and immediately the car comes down off the jack. As long as your driver doesn't drop the clutch while the car's still up on the jacks, as unfortunately Charles Verts did, but nevertheless you have, I think, a small advantage. It's great to get off the jack. It's a long pit lane exit. It's up the hill in the outside of Eau Rouge through Radio. Nevertheless, as you pointed out, it's a shorter run than if you are the very first pit lane in the Formula 1 pits on the high ground here at Spa.
Now, earlier on, we had the free practice session, which was twice interrupted by red flags. One of them was triggered by the number 52 Ferrari, which is the Nick Homerson, Louis Machil's, Andrea Bertolini and Daniel Serra, Chico Serra's sons at Ferrari. The other was by number 11 Bentley, the Team Parker Racing entry, Ewan Mackay, Nikolai Kiergaard, Frank Bird. That had a fuel pressure problem and stopped and then limped home, but it was safer to stop the session rather than have people running at a very high pace while the car limped back. So nobody in mega strife, but of course you want to try and get through without too many dramas. But I mean, look at the weather, John. This is extraordinary. The sun is shining, sunglasses are on, it's chilly, but this is a very nice autumnal day at Spa.
Well, I'm always a glass half full guy when I come to Spa, because experience has told me. In fact, I think the last time I raced at Spa in a proper race, not in a one-make thing, which I did back end of 1990. But it was a Group C race, 1987. And did one stint, came and thought, all right, I'll get out. My co-driver Jan Lammers can take over. No, stay in the car. You're familiar with the conditions. Did a second stint, came in on getting out of the car. No, stay in. Here we are at the back end of October. I can't believe it is absolutely glorious. It's just given me faith that it isn't always glass half empty rather than glass half full at Spa.
It was pretty wet this morning, a lot of overnight rain, but the road has dried out over the course. Whoops, Ollie Wilkinson there goes a bit wide at the so-called Speaker's Corner. The road has dried out over the course of the day, but it's going to be, thinking of the race, John, there's a lot more nighttime, dark running. I mean, even at 7:30, 7:45 this morning, it was still pretty dark out there. So the teams are going to have a real test in the night, aren't they?
I think it's a very difficult race this year, simply because it's virtually 12 hours of daylight, and maybe not even that. It could be 13 hours of darkness with a bit of twilight and then going into darkness. But those drivers who have competed certainly in the Daytona 24 hours, which is a race which has got virtually equal time, daylight to darkness, will understand what it's like to drive for long stints. And it gets dark here at Spa because the circuit runs one side of the valley all the way up to Lake Coombe. Then you've got the middle section where we're looking at now. This is the climb back up the other side. And you've got forests on one side. It's only the middle of the racetrack where you've got any sense of, maybe you can see around you, you've got some space. But it is going to be a very, very dark 12 hours for all the competitors. And there are some competitors, maybe more in the AM category particularly, who are not comfortable driving for long durations during night time.
Yeah, that's a fair point. We have seen in the past, haven't we, that teams have to shuffle their strategy around to have the most accomplished or the most confident driver within the darkness. This morning's free practice session was topped by, and it's almost a surprise after the season that they've had, the Orange One FFF racing team, Lamborghini, Dennis Lind, Marco Papelli, and doing the time, Andrea Caldarelli. So, John, a car that we've not really seen much of in the races thus far this year, certainly in the Endurance Cup, suddenly looks like it might be back on song for the Blue Ribbon event of the year.
I think we've been rather spoiled by the performance of the ML Pry Racing Lamborghinis. They've done extremely well again. We saw in the last couple of sprint rounds. Dennis Lind right now, he was just fourth because he's been dropped down to, in fact, he's down to fifth because literally his cars now complete their flying laps, their first or second flying laps. Times are descending. Matteo Drudi's gone quickest at a 2:18.9. I mean, that's a pretty impressive time straight out of the box, considering that there have not been a huge amount of conditions like this to get dialed into.
Now, Bentley came close, didn't it, a couple of years ago, but this is a brand that still is hunting a really good result at Spa. Maxime Soulet driving number 3, one of the K-Pax entries, and remember that we've got cars here scoring points in GT World Challenge Europe and some nominated for Intercontinental GT Challenge points as well. Not very many McLarens, but we do have there, you could see just a moment ago, the Ollie Wilkinson Optimum Motorsport car. But Maxime Soulet at his home circuit here, John, he's going to be one to watch, isn't he?
Very much so. I mean, Maxime Soulet, what I like about Maxime Soulet is he's a great racer. And this team, very strong lineup. Maxime Soulet behind the wheel right now. Jules Gougnot, we all know Jules Gougnot. Jordan Pepper. Jordan Pepper was the star in a Bentley, K-Pax Bentley, during the early part of 2020 when we didn't actually have live racing, we had sim racing. And I remember Jordan Pepper was mega in this car. I think might have been at Silverstone.
That's right, absolutely. He dominated, didn't he? So you're right, Jordan Pepper is one to watch. The thing is, as we go through this session, as we go through qualifying, as we go through night practice, even as we get through the first bit of the race, we're going to be touching on names. There are so many star drivers here. Find an entry list, download it from the championship website and drool, because this is perhaps the best quality Spa 24 entry we have had in a long time. And you've got last year's winners, Kevin Est, Richard Leitz, Michael Christensen. They're back, they are reunited, and they are with a different team, KCMG, but they're still Porsche, and they are back. And the last time you had exactly the same winning drivers back-to-back, exactly the same driver lineup, 1979, 1980, so it's been a long time. Can they make history, those three, by doing it themselves here?
You know, I've got a bit of a feeling in my Eau Rouge water that this race has been dominated by the German motor industry, the German manufacturers.
Yeah.
And it's about time we saw a Ferrari team standing on the podium in a 24-hour race. And I just wonder, is this going to be their year?
It's a thought, isn't it? It's a good thought. I mean, where do you put your money? Because you've got some tough opposition, but you've got some strong cars, so it's possible. Possible.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. We're here in October. No one really knows. Sort of July, you can anticipate the weather because it's more consistent. The end of July, normally you're expecting pretty good weather. Even at Spa, we can have mixed weather. We had a 5-year race interruption last year in the middle of the night. But nobody can predict what's going to happen. So this is going to be, for me, the most unpredictable Spa 24 hours, certainly that I've been involved in, and I'm sure for many of the competitors, it'll be the same.
I would go along with that, certainly. And it is one of those races, potentially, where more than ever, you keep out of trouble. You don't necessarily need to be going for qualifying lap times for 24 hours. Just keep out of trouble. Keep going. Get to the end of the stint. Tyres, fuel, driver change if you need to. Back out. Keep going, because the expectation is that the retirement number will be pretty high, and therefore if you finish, you've got a chance of finishing pretty well.
I mean, as is always the case, we all know that the way to win a race is to spend the least amount of time in the pit lane, and that involves doing your standard tyre, fuel, driver change. But then it's all the other little sort of niggly things that occur. Somebody's had an accident, there's debris on the racetrack, you run across debris, you get an unexpected tyre cut down, that puts you out of sequence. It's about, you look at Tom Christensen, wish he was here racing this weekend. He didn't win 9 Le Mans because you're lucky, you understand how to win races. There are drivers and cars and teams here this weekend who understand precisely what they're going to do. And even then, factors beyond their control can come into play.
No, you're quite right. Tom Onslow Cole's Mercedes is the one that's on screen at the moment. So this car, number 74, running for Ram Racing in Pro-Am. We've touched on the fact that it's a quality entry, but don't forget you've got the overall battle. You've got Silver, Pro-Am and Am, plus Intercontinental GT. So there's an awful lot to juggle over the course of this race. Best lap time, incidentally, early doors in this session for the Valkenhorst Motorsport BMW squad. Augusto Farfus, Nick Katzberg, Philip Eng. So you've got Philip Eng, who's won the Nürburgring 24 hours. You've got Nick Katzberg, who's a Nürburgring 24 and also an Indianapolis 8-hour winner. And Augusto Farfus, who's, of course, a very, very accomplished single-seater touring car turned GT racer. So that has got to be strong. And Valkenhorst already won this event 2 years back. For WRT, Eduardo Mortara there, number 32, clambering up the curve. The WRT squad has rather been shuffled over the last few days with the ever-changing COVID nature of the world, forcing some drivers to not be able to race and others take their place. So the Audi lineup has changed, but it's still very, very strong indeed.
One would have to say, looking just on paper, how can anybody beat this WRT team or any of the other Audi family members, Santa Locker and Semter Racing? Such a well-developed car.
Yeah.
So it's a turnkey race car that does everything it says on the lid. It does for you. The weakness inevitably is always going to be, and I say this, it's the human factor. So contain your enthusiasm. It is 24 hours, not a 24-hour endurance race. It's a 24 one-hour sprint event. And that's how I now judge Spa. In the good old days when you sort of drove in Group A touring cars and you had to go down to third gear to climb up the hill all the way up to what was the bus stop chicane. These cars are doing 260 to 70 kilometers per hour. Just coming into Blanchimont here right now. So just cut out human error.
WRT, just thinking about how strong they are, of course, within that team, you've got Vincent Voss. He has won this race as a driver. You've got, also on the managerial side, Thierry Tassin. He has won this race as a driver. You've got Pierre Dieudonné. He has won this race as a driver. So it's not just got a great driver lineup, what he has it. I mean, he's got a really good brains trust in the pit lane overseeing it all.
Well, you've always got a general. Now, the general will be Vincent Voss, but you need good lieutenants, and certainly Thierry Tassin and Pierre Dieudonné in particular. Charles Birch is an investor in the team, but he's also there supporting the team. as he is supporting his son. So it's the build-up, it's a pyramid in the WRT team. The decisions come from the top based on the information that is fed up to the top. You know, I don't want to make motor racing sound a simple profession, but it does get overcomplicated at times.
Charles Witt certainly has been very impressive, the new sprint champion. His father, Yves Witt, an investor in the team, as John says. Now, there is another potential winning car. It's been really quick, if unlucky, attracting damage when it shouldn't this year. But from Pereira, Albert Costa, Giacomo Altway for Emil Frey Racing. Here's a team we've seen it win in GT World Challenge Europe with the Lexus, but of course very accomplished with the Lamborghini. You rule this car out at your peril, don't you?
Well, absolutely, but what I really look forward to seeing is the dominant team last year, again Lamborghini powered, the FFM Orange Racing team. They just wiped the board with everything that was available to win. Now Emil Frey have transferred to Lamborghini, have done an outstanding job. This car has shown great pace, not just simply the lap time, but it's quick on the bits of the circuit where it's important. And likewise, now we're in the middle of sector. We're coming down, wave the yellow flags, that's the 52 Ferrari. What's happened to that?
Let's have a look. It was going slowly up Radion when we had a shot a little while ago. I just thought it was on a slow lap looking for clear track space, but it has got a problem. And it limps on. Doesn't look damaged, does it? So maybe the car, and don't forget this did have a drama in the first session earlier on. This is the Homerson Machiels Bertolini Serra car. That looks like it's got another mechanical drama. Trying to see who's behind the wheel. Sorry, John, yeah.
It's like limp home mode as you meant. Was that? I just wonder, was there a tire? Just the angle, the camber on the racetrack tends to distort whether one side or the other side might be slightly lower, whether it's he's picked up something simply, literally on the beginnings of a lap. Anyway, we'll find out maybe when the car does limp its way back up into the pit lane, be it the Formula One pits or the historic pits, which are on the descent down into Eau Rouge.
Still trying to see who it is behind the wheel of that car. As we've seen, it limps on. That's from Pereira, who is hustling on in the Lamborghini. 52 is Bertolini, right, that answers that. So, the car's heading for the pits. See the KCMG Porsche there, the Hong Kong team racing in the Spa 24 Hours really for the first time, and of course new to Porsches this year, but upholding the factory honour with 2 entries. So KCMG given all the tools for the job, right car, right drivers. From Pereira 25th, let's just talk him over the line, but coming way wide out of the bus stop. What about track limits there, John?
I took the very words out of my mouth. I mean, I've already noticed a number of cars going completely off the racetrack. Now, I've no doubt race director will be looking at these images and thinking, is it too early in proceedings to slap a wrist or slap the back of the legs or wherever you want to slap them? Certainly, I think that will be reined in by the time we get through to qualifying, because it will be in qualifying that you've got the most to lose. What goes on in this session, pre-qualifying, doesn't count for a grid position, but if you do it in qualifying, you might pay a penalty.
Now, there is something, just thinking about qualifying and positions of the grid, which is looming over a couple of drivers, and one significantly is Giacomo Altway in that Emil Frey Lamborghini, and that is a behavioural warning point tally. Now, if you are naughty on track, when John has finished suggesting where you need to be slapped, the stewards can issue behavioural warning points. Now, when you get to 3, a grid drop for the next race starts to come into effect, and Altway is one of 2 drivers who already has 3 behavioural warning points. So it's possible that the car might get more between now and Saturday early afternoon for the race start, but right now Altway and his team is looking at a grid drop, come what may, because of the 3 BWPs, behavioural warning points, that he's already accrued. So they're on the back foot to start with, and there, John, is a very sorry sight on the edge of the road coming up from the Cour Paul Frere.
Yeah, that's fortunate. The cars are on the incline out of the Paul Frere curb, so that's a car that isn't going to go any further, and all he has got in the cockpit, he can shut everything down, do a reset on the onboard computer to see if that sparks the Ferrari 488 back into life. But not a great start for the 52 Ferrari, not even halfway through this 1 hour session.
Red flag, I'm
Red
afraid.
flag, there we are, there we go.
Not a surprise,
Probably
really, is it?
the right decision.
Yeah, if anybody else goes wide, they're going to find that car. So Augusto Farfus is the fastest at the moment, 2 minutes 17.445. There you can see the reason for the stoppage. Andrea Bertolini has stopped the Ferrari, so that is the red flag. But it's BMW having a real purple patch. Nürburgring 24 winners, Indianapolis 8R winner, the BMW. And the sister car at Valkenhorst is third with Nick Yellerly behind the wheel. Nick also, of course, part of that Nürburgring 24 winning squad. So similar type of circuit, maybe a similar type of race, although that was red flagged for quite a long chunk because of bad weather, and it was a month earlier. First and third, BMW.
Strong showing. I mean, we saw how strong they were here, 2 years ago when Valkenhorst won the race. Just going back to looking at Andrea Bertolini, in the past we've seen drivers stop at bits of the racetrack where understandably a red flag is thrown. I wonder, could Andrea have done maybe a little bit more, a little bit earlier, because by stopping where he stopped, it was probably a reasonable 50-50, if not better odds, that the circuit would have to go under a red flag. So it enables the car to be brought back to the pits, and whatever the problem is, dive into it.
Now, let us head to the pits, because 107 Bentley ain't going anywhere. Let's find out why. Seb Morris, one of the drivers, is with Gemma Scott.
Seb, the weekend started off already with some challenges. Talk us through that.
Yeah, we had a brake problem first of all, so we lost about an hour. Everything was a big rush to get going, including me. I was rushing to get out there and get some laps in, made a very uncharacteristic error and shoved it in the walls. So the team, there was luckily not much damage at all, just cosmetic. So the team did a really good job getting it all repaired. So now we're going to go out for a proper run before qualifying.
So just, getting everything back out and running now, things are quite tight in terms of the weekend here and getting the car back up and running. How's it feeling now once you've been out there?
Yeah, Pierre's got out in there and said the car feels absolutely fine. So we're just doing some setup adjustments on ride height, all which this is sort of stuff we should have done last session. So we're again behind, but obviously it's a very long race, so hopefully we can catch up.
Thank you very much, Seb.
Thank you.
So Seb Morris then having been off earlier on, and still that car has only really had an installation lap, so they're on the back foot, John, aren't they, right from the start. You can see a little bit of the debris, the damage rather, on the side of the car, but they're losing track time that they really could do with having.
Very much so. You can see a replacement door likewise, so whatever Seb did this morning, he did it pretty well, and all the way down the left hand side, he's given it a right old rub, and well, let's hope the car, it's all superficial, it's only bodywork, and we know that Bentley, they've had probably the biggest bodywork build of any team, any manufacturer this year. Anytime anybody gets close to it, particularly around the right front, those carbon fibre body panels, they can become detached. Whatever it was on the left-hand side, well, it's taken the shine off the Bentley, but as long as the speed's still there, that's all that matters. Indeed.
I'm slightly curious as to why those cars have driven up the hill, because we're still under red flag conditions and there isn't a green that I can see, so I would have thought you have to stay at the bottom of the pit lane where the white line is, but some cars were being held, others have crept through in error, and some have now gone to the pit out at the top of the hill. So Alain Adol, the race director, will be doing his proverbial right now, I would have thought.
I wonder, have the drivers had their pre-race briefing yet, or is that something that they'll enjoy tomorrow? Certainly, those are the things that would be put into the notes for the teams to make sure that their drivers fully understand. Now, the Honda's making its way. I mean, it's still under a red flag, so why these cars have been released, maybe we'll find out in time.
Yes, whether they're being allowed onto the circuit or held at the very top, I don't know. Here's the GPX Racing Porsche. Is that going to be allowed through? Marshall stands for the moment and holds the car. Let's have a look in the pits. This is the endurance pits, anyway. And there you have the very spectacularly liveried Boutsen Gignon BMW, the art car for the event. What do you think, John? Bit psychedelic, or would you have that on your wall?
Been there, done all. It was all done back in the early 70s when BMW employed, I think, about 4 or 5 of the world's most famous contemporary artists to come up. There was Jackson Pollock, Andy Warhol, I can't remember who else there was. I mean, it was a fantastic innovation. And actually, you know what? It's nice to see distinctive a car of distinction. There's no way you're going to mistake that for German racing silver, are we?
Definitely not. Definitely not. It will stand out, certainly in the daylight element, that's for sure, against the black and orange normal Boots and Gignon colours. Right, there you see the GPX Porsche is being held. We are still under red flag conditions. The clock is ticking on down, so pre-qualifying for the moment is still ticking away, but the team's frustrated within the pit lane. Just going back to the tyre point that we were discussing earlier on, if you're in the top pits, I was asking one of the teams earlier, and the news has just been confirmed to me. How much temperature do you lose between taking your tyres out of your tyre warming cupboard, which is what they have, not blankets, but they go in a cupboard, a small oven, if you like. You take them out, put them on the car. How much temperature do they lose between going from the F1 pits, the top pits, to pit out where the Porsche is being held at the moment? And the answer is 15 degrees. That's quite a lot, John, isn't it?
Well, it could be worse, but it's only 15 degrees. It depends what the temperature is that they're permitted to cook the tyre up to.
And equally, I suppose it depends just how cold an evening it is when you put those tyres on, because you want them to be as warm as possible. Now, I mentioned last year's winners. Well, they're back, and always a highlight here is Kevin Estre. He's with Gemma.
Kevin, already a red flag this weekend, first of many, I'm sure, but you have had some track time. How's the car feeling?
Yeah, the car's okay. Not perfect though. We need to work a bit and improve. We have a bit of a weird feeling on the braking, so we have to work on it. But it's definitely good to get some laps on the dry here, because for sure the weekend is looking a bit hard. But yeah, I guess red flag in this kind of racing with more than 50 cars, you always expect it. So hopefully it's not taking too long and we can get out there soon.
How do you feel about getting the problems sorted and everything done in time for quali tonight?
It will be hard. It will be hard. I think at the moment we focus on the race car and try to get a good race car on dry conditions. And we don't really keep focusing on quali. We are not there yet. It's new team for us, new engineer, everything. So difficult to learn in this short amount of time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gemma. So Kevin Estre back with Richard Leitz and Michael Christensen, last year's winners. But as I was making the point, John, KCMG, new to the Porsche fold, given the right team equipment, given the right car, and that is certainly going to be a team with a stellar lineup that's pitching for a win. But I think it's very interesting, isn't it, to see how Porsche has backed this new team. You know, there you go, there's a brand new car, and there are 3 factory drivers that won it last year. So clearly KCMG is well thought of by Porsche.
Indeed they are. You don't just take your top GT3 drivers globally and stick them into a team that, well, because somebody's come along with a shed load of money, they have to have the organisation behind. And you're talking about an organisation running at a level that is appropriate to being given the blessing from factory Porsche drivers. And Kevin Estre, in any Porsche, is always going to be a standout competitor. We saw it here last year, as we look at again, that the GPX Porsche sitting, waiting now to get back onto a green track. And there's Porsches of all shades. That one there on the left, that's a nice looking. Black looks, the car looks really, actually, you know what? If I was going to buy one of those, I would choose black.
It does look good. It does look good, I'll grant you. Yeah, Kevin Estre talking about that car feeling weird under braking, so they're trying to dial out that issue. We've only got just over half an hour ready to go as you look at Louie Delatraz, esports champion, back at the start of the year. So the GPX car with the Targa Florio Gulf colours on it was 32nd, and that's another one to try and get a bit of a wriggle on. But right now, nobody has really thought about qualifying. They're just trying to cycle drivers through, get some mileage in, and we go green. So we are back live. Session is on again here at Spa. So now it's this frantic scramble out of the pit lane. And there is Louie Delatraz heading uphill. Somebody that's being able, John, it seems, to combine being a good GT racer with being a good single-seater driver at the same time.
Louie Delatraz has been at the sharp end of Formula 2 pretty much all year. He's been at the front of sim racing during the early part of the year, and he's an exceptionally accomplished driver in the real deal. Here we see him coming up into the entry is Malmedy, or Le Coum. Then you exit through Malmedy. Malmedy is this second of the rights So he goes down the hill all the way down to Bruxelles. Now, Delatraz, I mean, of course, his father, his history, has got a motorsport heritage and legacy. But, you know, jumping from a high downforce, pretty impressively quick single-seater into a GT car, which is almost, not quite, double the weight, probably with about 50, 60 horsepower, maybe even more, less than the single-seater, on a spec tyre. It takes a lot of versatility, and he's displaying that versatility.
His father, as you say, has a motorsport heritage. Jean-Denis Delatraz was perhaps not a star at the highest level of single-seater racing, but he was a race winner in FIA GT Championship days, the forerunner, if you like, to GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup. And Louie Delatraz out on track then, and Delatraz will share this car with Romain Dumas and Thomas Preining. So Romain Dumas, who's been a Spa 24 winner, multiple Le Mans winner, and Thomas Preining part of the junior roster. Again, this is another very strong driver combination, isn't it?
Well, all the way through the Porsche lineups, I'm just looking at some now. The quickest of the Porsches to date is Alexandre Imperatori, whatever it means. He's in 9th position. So on a 2-minute 19 against a 2-minute 17 with a few tenths of a second. But I don't know what, I was curious to know why Kevin Estre would feel uncomfortable under braking. Because normally, you know, I expect a Porsche, there's the instruction manual, that's what you're going to do. I mean, there's not a lot of room for flexibility, but ultimately it does come down to individual driver preferences, and it's what you feel through the seat of your pants. The circuit is obviously green because it's been raining at different points over the last few days. So maybe once the track itself starts to what we call rubber in, maybe the feel from Kevin Estre's Porsche will actually come more to him than it is presently.
Let us see. He, I think with the rest of the team, is conscious that it's not going to be easy to do back-to-back wins, but let's see how that car fares then as the session continues. Augusto Farfus with the BMW, as I mentioned, is the fastest. We've got one or two rather ominous-looking clouds just rolling in. I did a moment ago think I could hear thunder, but actually it was a Mercedes that fired up underneath me, so that rather stopped that. Quite impressively, fourth at the moment is Dane Cameron in the Honda. And now, okay, what does this prove? However, Dane racing at Spa for the first time, and also the American driver racing in Europe for the first time since a long time ago, namely 2006, when he was racing in the Formula Palmer Audi Autumn Trophy. So that's probably going to be a Snetterton race meeting. But at Spa for the first time and fourth quickest, as you look at Louie Delatraz, now starting to pick up the pace a little.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the Honda appearance here last year was interesting. I think one of the issues that they suffered from was over the long duration of a multiple hour, up to 24 hours, with cooling, possibly oil cooling. I don't know whether they've managed, I hope they have, gotten on top of that particular issue. But Louie Delatraz comes out very economically as he exits through the pole curve, not being greedy with the curve on the outside up to Blanchimont. Let's see what he does on the exit of Blanchimont. Remember, this is an outlap, so he's not trying to wring the neck and get the ultimate time. Well, he's within track limits, in my view, coming out of Blanchimont. So now that he's done that outlap, the tyre pressures likewise will have, well, maybe the tyre temperatures happened, because certainly he lost front end. The front end just washed away. That's an example of the left front not being up to track temperature.
So Delatraz over the timing line. His father, I was talking about earlier in FIA GT terms, he did actually win this race when the FIA GT Championship encompassed the Spa 24 Hours. So can Louie be a second-generation winner of the race? Where, you might ask, is the car that was fastest in free practice earlier in the day? 30th is the answer for where you find Dennis Lind.
Well, Dennis Lind about 10 minutes ago was actually about second or third quickest. And that's just an indication of how once the track starts to rubber in, once drivers get out, get a feel for the track in these improving conditions and get settled behind the wheel. So literally, bump, 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 you're just falling off. And I've only got the top 20 in my timing and scoring without having to scroll through with a mouse and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know who's down beyond me, but anyway, to be down in 30th position is not representative of either Dennis Lind or the FFS Racing's Lamborghini.
It's not, you're quite right, but have a look at 29th. I'll tell you it's Dennis Olsen, the reigning IGTC champion, 28th in the times. Nick Tandy now becomes 29th. Giacomo Altway is 28th. Why is all that shuffling? Well, Joe Osborne in the McLaren has just gone up to 26th. 26th, big deal. Well, it's such a quality lineup. I mean, what have we got? Something like 37 pro cars. It's going to be a wide open race, this.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, the quality of the cars is one thing, but the quality of drivers, more and more professional drivers, this is something they want to put on their belt. This is a scalp that they definitely want to carry, because the prestige of this event is just going up and up by the year. And I mean, we're in an odd year. We've had odd events back in the 1968 Le Mans because of the student riots in Paris. The race was held in September. It was appalling weather. It's that kind of element that's going to throw something special into this year's 24 Hours.
Yes, I think you're right. And who knows what the weather for the race has in store. I mean, last year we had that biblical rain that stopped things. Who can tell? Right now, though, Gilles Vanelay in the psychedelic BMW. If you can have a hippie Porsche, can you have a hippie BMW? I don't know, but the BMW battles on. Gilles Vanelay, vastly experienced driver. Still under these threatening clouds. I mean, there's Spa for you. The sun is shining and it's looking dark over the fast corner of Blanchimont, so anything could happen in the weather before the end of the day.
On the subject of a hippie Porsche, of course, I know that you were referring to the lovely Porsche Cabriolet that Janis Joplin had, specially painted for her before she sadly passed away in the late 60s.
Thank you, John. This is John's music hour that will be treated to more nuggets from in due course. So there was also far less famous compared to Janis Joplin, but the racing hippie Porsche 917, which you can still see on occasion. However, back to the plot in hand. John and I have been saying all year we quite like these retro Porsche liveries. There's the sister GPX car, number 12, Patrick Pilet at the wheel. Now, this one's going all right, John. This is 13th fastest.
Yep, I mean, again, just get a run of 4 laps, get your first time lap in, and then start to move forward. And whatever the feelings you get, but Kevin Estre, we saw when he was about to go, I'm just trying to remember which car it was now, when it just lost the front going into the final turn 18. One more lap, that situation wouldn't arise. For Patrick Pilet, currently 13th, half a second down in the first sector. What's he going to be doing in the middle of the second sector?
Let's see. Yeah, that Nürburgring win, in quotes, got away, didn't it? Or a good result that got away from him. There's traffic up the road, in fact. You've got the Lucas Legeret Mercedes that's going to have to be negotiated as they go through the pith-path. Right, left, burst of acceleration, drop down towards L'École, past the college. So Patrick Pilet hard at work. He's still Farfus the fastest, but up to third has just got Andy Soucek in the K-Pax Bentley number 9. So Andy Soucek, who knows his way around here, been a mainstay of the 24 Hours of Spa for many, many seasons now, going nicely up to third quickest. Lots of people being warned about track limits, John, incidentally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. How many cars we got? I can't even count them as well, right? Nearly 10 or so, particularly at turn 3, and that's the exit up at Réunion, a part of the racetrack which has traditionally been abused to the point, beyond the point, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, both on the inside at the, you might call the apex, and then on the exit, where as drivers try to straight line as much as possible to carry the momentum, not lose anything through a change of direction. Racing drivers will be racing drivers.
'Twas ever thus, absolutely. James Callardo's Ferrari, incidentally, he's up to 8th fastest. That's the best of the prancing horses at the moment. Patrick Pilet's last lap did not generate an improvement, so it's still Farfus quickest. Raffaele Marciello has taken over the Mercedes that's second fastest. It was Timur Boguslavski who had done the time, but Raffaele Marciello is now ensconced behind the wheel of 88. But Patrick Pilet pressing on now, getting a bit more curb happy there at Les Combes.
Yes, I mean, certainly got very curb happy there coming out of Malmedy. David, there's one driver here I'm waiting to see behind the wheel of his car, Koumi Kobayashi.
Yes.
Who is a star in every sense of the word. He is a star. And on a racetrack I mean, I've not seen him in a Ferrari before, but make no mistake, he will light up every one of the 18 corners around this racetrack.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kobayashi has been very, very spectacular, hasn't he, in anything, as you rightly say. So he is certainly one to watch. 28th is where Kobayashi's Ferrari is. You're riding on board Kelvin van der Linde's Audi right now. Plunging downhill, John.
Yeah, into the best corner on the circuit. Poo-haw! I mean, it falls away from you. You've got the curve on the outside. Then it sort of, the camera comes back. It's one of those corners in a GT3 car that is still a challenge. Eau Rouge and Radio, the challenge is diminished. Blanchimont, challenge is diminished. Poo-haw, right there. Bring it on. Every lap. It's spectacular to watch. It's even more spectacular to drive.
Rattles it up onto the curb, doesn't he, coming up to the Cour Paul Frere, but the Audi rides the curb well, and it's a good job because he's even wider there.
Well, that, Kevin, is, you know what, that is going beyond the call of duty, and I will be certain at some point, whatever that the corner number is 15. It's the Paul Frere curb, but it's turned 15. I suspect that will be registering shortly on our message on our screen to respect the turns 15. And Kevin van der Linde is leading the parade in that one for sure.
Yeah, no question about that. So finding out where the limits are, but do it in these sessions when it doesn't really matter. If you lose a lap time or you get a finger wagging, well, fair enough. But if it happens in qualifying or the race and the penalties are more draconian, then you would feel a Charlie. So he's trying to get it out of his system now. Patrick Kujala is up to third fastest, and there is 51 Ferrari. Now that was the car that Nicholas Nielsen had live there, John. That's Kobayashi, Kamui Kobayashi in the Hub Auto Ferrari.
Well, at least that's a Ferrari we'll easily identify. It almost looks like RJN Racing's McLaren. It's got a very similar the Jensen Racing, whatever he calls it. So anyway, it is a Ferrari. There is Kobayashi. I mean, he is an absolute joy to watch. He's a hoot as a guy. I mean, he's just one of these characters, personalities that Formula One to some degree has lost, but a great character.
Well, he's doing a good job here, look, because in terms of sectors, he has done a personal best. The car is 30th fastest, but Kobayashi improving now. He's done the a personal best sector one, the best of anybody in sector one by, on the most recent lap, Pierre-Alexandre Jean in Bentley 107, back out into the session and up to 27th. But yeah, Kobayashi having a go.
Absolutely, I mean, all the better for him. I mean, some drivers just get in, and even though the car may not feel comfortable, they drive through it. I mean, I can think back to one co-driver of mine on one occasion, the late, great Stefan Bellop, tragically lost his life here in 1985. On his first flying lap in a car I shared, he went quicker than I did in any of my 10. Kobayashi is of the same ilk. He is just absolutely incorrigible.
Well, the lap is not an improvement, although it started off well, but he's still adapting, you could argue, to a GT3 Ferrari. The session has, just as you see, 18.5 minutes still on the clock. Augusto Farfus, who had done the gun time earlier on, is into the pits to give way now to one of his co-drivers. We'll see who jumps into the car. Number 9 is going to be given back to Alvaro Parent, who was driving in this morning from Andy Soucek. 78, Lamborghini has gone third. That is now Patrick Kujala at the wheel of the car. But Kobayashi makes the climb uphill. And actually, there's not that much traffic around him. He's got reasonable clear track space, but the other side of Lecombe, I fear it is going to get busy.
Yeah, I mean, what I was just watching his entry into, through and exit of Eau Rouge and Radio, it looked great. It looked like there's a guy who actually knows how to drive a racing car. He didn't abuse track limits over Radio. He didn't abuse them on the outside of Radio. He just looked like he knows how to drive a racing car. There's Dane Cameron in the Honda. That's a great car. And I think I'd love to see more Hondas racing in Europe, because I think potentially, as is often the case with Honda, in not necessarily just in Formula One, but in other categories in which they race, they eventually come to be, well, not dominant, but consistently successful.
Yeah, I mean, Dane Cameron, for somebody that is new to Spa, is still their 6th fastest. His car went well last year as well, from memory. And Dane Cameron, we saw it go well in Kyle Army in the IGTC race there. This is a car with bags of potential. It's a shame there's only one of them on the entry list, but it's great to have it here.
Yeah, I mean, again, the car looks planted. It looks as if it's got good aero. It's got good mechanical grip. I mean, for a driver to come and sort of get in and be on it as quickly as Dane Cameron was doing, to be up to 7th quickest right now in a 2:18.666 is his best lap. He's not showing any improvements. In fact, his middle sector is down in time. So maybe when he did his earlier time, fresher set of tyres, maybe now just getting into the zone where the tyres got stable, and he's gone into the pit lane, so it's all irrelevant.
So in he comes, the American Dane Cameron, another American driver in the entry. Good to have him here because we missed him a bit this year. Taylor Proto, and he's with Gemma.
Taylor, you've just got out the car, and you seem to be struggling a little bit. What's happening?
We're just kind of chasing the balance now and getting the car set between all 4 drivers. Our new tyres are kind of at understeer, and then we transition to oversteer a little quicker than we'd like. Otherwise, the car's pace is quite nice, and all 3 cars are quite similar between the setups, so I think we're on the right track. We just put Baptiste in the car so he can get a bit more experience around the track because he's new to the GT3. So, yeah, all thumbs up for the race though for now. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah, of course.
Taylor Proto then, talking about the balance of the car. Yes, I call him an American, and I always do, forgive me. He lives in America. The family has been based in America for a while, but he is British by birth and still with his British accent. His father, Mark Proto, also a racer. The pair of them started off in Lamborghini Super Trofeo in North America. But yes, note to self, Taylor Proto still British, despite living in America and having what you might call a rather American-sounding name. This is the car that's fastest then. Augusto Farfus did the time. Philip Eng is behind the wheel of it. And again, John, we've talked about this in the context of Porsche. Same applies to BMW. There's Valkenhorst as a factory-blessed independent team with a real impressive host of factory drivers behind the wheel of the cars.
It's a roster of the best that Munich can provide. And Philippe Eng again just illustrating that you can run wide coming out of Blanchimont. Doesn't matter in this session because you lose a time, it doesn't make any difference. But Philippe Eng again, one of those drivers, been loyal to BMW over many seasons and has been repaid success here, what was it, 2-3 years ago when the Valkenhorst team won. I have to say, maybe somewhat against expectation. I tell you what, they are one of the favourites right now to take yet another victory for BMW based in Munich.
Certainly BMW looking strong at the moment. 30th fastest Michael Christensen, so there is the car of last year's winning trio of drivers. The Danish driver Michael Christensen behind the wheel, ex-Formula BMW racer turned one-mate Porsche racer turned GT Porsche racer. And ahead is the Fricadelli motorsport car, the team that took Dennis Olsen to victory in Kyle Army to win the IGTC Championship with a lot of help from Nick Tandy and others. And that car also is going to be a potential winner. Marco Mappelli, number 63 Lamborghini, has improved up now to 11th in the times. But every car we see, John, you think, well, that's a good quality lineup, that's a good quality lineup, and it underlines how many potential winners of the race there are.
I mean, all these teams are actually independent teams, but they're fully factory blessed. They've got everything that each of the manufacturers can provide. They're run by independent operations, both in the case of Porsche, BMW, Mercedes and Audi. They are, to all intents and purposes, factory teams, but independently guided. So, I mean, you've got the best, in my view, the best in the world behind the wheels of GT3 cars right now.
Can't argue with that, can we? Number 47 then, Michael Christensen into the chicane. Does he stay out? Yes, he does, with just 13 more minutes on the clock. So Philippe Eng is the man that is fastest. Now, the order is a little different insofar as you've not got the driver that set the best time in many of the front-running cars within the classification. So what you're seeing on that graphic is who is behind the wheel now, not who did the time. So it's the right order, but the drivers now, as the teams cycle through, maybe in the car for the first time. And 56 we have out on track. And this is the view on board, hustling out of Eau Rouge.
And that's as flat as you could probably get. The thing you've got to be careful, of course, is when you come up onto the Kendall Straight. That's where the pit lane blend exit comes in. Nice bit of work by the driver, just to got on the brakes early, not to get into the way. So Michael Christensen up into Les Combes, swings right, swings left. Then it's the exit here through Malmedy, where drivers tend always waiting to get on the throttle because there's never quite the sense that you can do it early enough. Then the breakdown into Brussels just goes on and on and on. There's a variety of options how you take this corner. Some come in and make it a very soft entry. Some try to sort of square it off, make it into almost a V. Then the corner with no name, but then here we go. Let's sit back and enjoy it and listen. Nothing like the sound of a flat six, in this case, as old Porsches are these days, water-cooled Porsche motor.
It's a great sound, isn't it? Michael Christensen concentrating hard as he comes now out of the pit path down towards L'École through the right. And how is this lap looking as he tries to piece it together? Not great. First sector time was no improvement, and he's fighting the car there.
He's been fighting the car pretty much the entire lap, so not maybe as easy a setup as he might like for a 24-hour event, but that's the progress and the work that they're doing.
So BMW topping the times, Augusto Farfus. It is, as you see Michael Christensen going wide at Blanchimont. Let's hear from Augusto Farfus now with Gemma.
Augusto currently topping the times. The car's looking good. You guys have won here before as well. Looking good heading into the weekend.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say we all should consider ourselves very lucky to be able to race. This is the hardest GT3 race in the planet. We have a big field. So far, car has been running pretty well. We know very well the car, so definitely this helps us. Currently, we are leading the session, but it's still a long, long way. So let's do step by step. There is a qualifying later on, and but so far I'm happy with the lineup I have with the team. We have done a very good job, so let's keep fingers crossed.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
So Augusto Farfus, thanks Gemma, former single-seater racer, came into touring cars initially in Alfa Romeos, was part of the works Alfa 156 squad in the European and World Touring Car Championships, but then moved to BMW and from touring cars to endurance and to GT racing. Mercedes there, is that the much yellow car still in the pit lane? I think it was, the ACA ASP entry. Now, Rover, the team that guided BMW to victory at the Nürburgring, running Porsches here. This is Laurens Vanthoor, but he's only 25th at the moment. Now, this car, Laurens Vanthoor, Nick Tandy, and the third driver of it, Earl Bamber. Again, you'd be tempted to put some money on this, John, wouldn't you?
Porsche royalty.
Well, yes.
And you can't have better. Porsche royalty, that's what they are.
You're right, you're absolutely right. And of course, for so many years we talked about Laurens Vanthoor in the context of racing here for WRT and Audi. Well, younger brother Dries is in the event, so just like last year, it doesn't happen very often, but we are going to get the Vanthoors up against each other.
Well, it'll be a battle of the Vanthoor family, and frankly, who's going to come out on top? It's very hard to judge. Laurens is now a much more round. Oh, where has he gone? What sort of exit is that out of the chicane? Are these guys serious? Are they serious with that exit out of the chicane? Oh, dear me. Where's race director? Get him in!
The list will grow of those, I should think, being warned about track limits. Yeah, the Vanthoors, one of a number of families represented in this race. They're in different cars. In the Herbert Motorsport Porsche, you've got the twin brothers of Robert and Alfred Renard. And in one of the Barwell Lamborghinis, you've got father and son, the Collards, Rob and Ricky, go up in the same car this time.
Guarantee you who'll be the quickest of those two.
I'll say nothing.
Rob is a pretty impressive competitor, whatever you put him in. Ricky is also impressive, but there's just something that Dad has got at the minute. Ricky will get it in time, it's in the genes, but Rob right now, I tell you what, if he had to stand on his head to shake his legs and whistle Dixie, to do that he would go quicker.
Now, this Ferrari, the Sky Tempesta racing car, this is going to have a former Formula One pole position winner here, Giancarlo Fisichella, getting into it. And way off the road there goes Chris Froggatt, getting Blanchimont wrong, and that's going to compromise the run to the bus stop, but he was way over the curb.
I mean, it wasn't, I've not seen as much, whether you might call it, not poor. Again, look at Chris Froggatt, how far, it's just nuts. Okay, it doesn't count for anything.
Yeah.
The time, if it gets disallowed, it gets disallowed. And drivers, part of maybe what they're doing is just finding out how far can we push the envelope, how far can we go before we get reprimanded and brought in and ultimately could get punished. So I suspect, I mean, we'll see this evening when we get into those sessions practice and then nighttime practice particularly, if drivers are reining in that exuberance.
Yeah, you're right. We will see. I mean, for the moment, yes, they might be seeing just how far they can go. I don't think you can necessarily blame this on track temperature. It's not Arctic out there. It's a nice autumn day. Now, what about Andrea Caldarelli then? Mr. Champion from last year, really. Didn't matter whether it was sprint, endurance, drivers or teams. Andrea was the man up to collect the trophy at the end of the season. And they've not had a great start to the year. Can they turn it on for this, the biggest GT3 race of them all? The car right now is 15th. Andrea is fresh into it, but he's another one going wide there at Speaker's Corner.
Very much so. But I mean, look, this team last year just dominated GT3 racing in Europe. There's nothing left to say, except they better do a bit better this year, a bit better here than they've done throughout the 2020 season. It hasn't been the same kind of... Look, how can you repeat the level of success that they enjoyed? Because all you do when you become such a dominant champion is then you're the target for every other manufacturer, every other team, every other driver pairing to take a pop at. It's an opportunity for Andrea and his team to come back now. He's got personal best in the middle sector, 6/10 down in sector 1, so net 3/10 of a second up. Final sector coming up the hill through Blanchimont. They did a great job with this car last year, and I suspect a lot of that engineering's been passed over to the ML Frey racing team. So that's why they have also, in their events this year, particularly in sprint events, have been so successful.
Yes, I suspect that is the case. So Caldarelli here, down in the first sector, quicker in the second, heads up towards the end of the lap. He's heading to the timing line. He'll break the beam in a moment. 5 more minutes of the session to go. We've been looking at some of the star cars. Andrea Caldarelli does go up to 9th. Another improver up to 6th is number 14, which is the Emil Frey Lamborghini with Riccardo Feller at the wheel of it. So it's BMW, Mercedes, Lamborghini, Bentley, Audi, Lamborghini, Porsche, Mercedes, Lamborghini, BMW. That is your top 10. The best of the Lamborghinis being the Barwell car, Alex McDowell at the wheel of 78.
Now, was that Alex McDowell that recorded the time or Patrick Kujala?
Patrick Kujala.
I mean,
yeah.
Okay, so Kujala. So, I mean, that's a Silver Cup car. The next Silver Cup car is the ACA ASP 89 Mercedes, all the way down, well, 13th. Nevertheless, I mean, that's Jimmy Pla's car. I think that's Jimmy Pla's car, isn't it? No, it's not. It's Benjamin Hites, Alex Fontana. So it's another strong ACA ASP Mercedes, but that's the gap between the first and second in that category.
Yeah, it's a huge gap, isn't it, in terms of time and the number of cars. Here for Garage 59 in number 159 is the car that Romain De Angelis has, the American driver. So somebody else new to Spa, but he needs the mileage, doesn't he, John? He needs the track time while he can.
Certainly does, and he's going to have to get used to it at night time as well, because when the lights go out here at Spa, and it'll be out for a long time, virtually it's 12 hours of night driving, and then whatever you get daytime, it might still be pretty dark at different points. So it's a big steep learning curve for Romain De Angelis to climb. Keep it on the track, my friend. Remember, it's easier to build time than it is to try and go too quick too soon, and then that's where the errors can creep in.
So with just under 3 more minutes of the session to go, we are getting 1 or 2 more improvers. Davide Rigon, he's one of them. He's up to 5th fastest now. Alessandro Pierguidi has taken over number 51 Ferrari, and that was briefly up to 7th. Some are pitting early because they can do another practice pit stop when they come in. Jules Gounon has just got his Bentley up to 21st. So there are still people out there and improving before the very end.
The Aston that we're looking at currently 16th, so I don't know whether it was De Angelis who set that time or one of the other drivers in that car. Whether it was, well, there's 4 drivers in that car. Well, it's Andrew Watson, James Poole, Valentin Hasclo. So one of the 4 has set that time, respectable time right now, 16th position.
Yeah, that's right. Looking good, isn't it? That car looking strong right now. So Romain De Angelis That lap that he has just done was an out lap, so this will be a proper flyer for him. 50th fastest here is Valentin Pierberg in another of the many Mercedes that we have in the entry. So Pierberg now ensconced behind the wheel of this car, which is the number 20 Mercedes. So it's the SPS Automotive Performance car. Dominic Baumann, Colin Braun and George Kurtz, the other drivers of that. Right, we've got less
just
than
interesting.
Sorry,
just the Ferrari, which was quicker through Eau Rouge Radio, just following the Mercedes, closed to the Mercedes coming into the braking, but didn't have enough gas in the tank to actually just get past before he got into Les Combes. So good performance in a straight line from that particular Mercedes. Ferrari maybe want to do a little bit of a work on how do they get a bit more top line speed, because end of the straight is the key overtaking part of this lap for everybody.
Now we're getting more warnings of people cutting the chicane. Car number 15 being one of them, which is the Tech 1 Racing Lexus. That's been a recent offender. There's less than a lap time left in this pre-qualifying session as the clock ticks on down. And now you can see Pierberg being caught there by the Hub Auto Ferrari, which when we looked at it earlier was Kamui Kobayashi behind the wheel. That's now gone the way through the driver rotation to Gomez. He's now taken over that car, so the Hub Auto car has the Brazilian Marcos Gomez behind the wheel.
Yeah, the Ferrari to me looks to be the quicker car in the lap, but of course we're at gains at speed. Parts of the racetrack where it's difficult. He's backed out of it now, coming up to the chicane with just 13 seconds on the clock, so whether he'll get across start-finish line to get one more clear lap probably isn't going to make it, because he's that little bit further behind the Mercedes, and the Mercedes might just sneak across 2-1. No, the flag is about, so the session is over, and neither the Mercedes or the Ferrari has got time for one more flying lap.
Can we read anything into that session, or is it very, very inconclusive just because of the way that people have been treating it, John?
I think you're right. I think it is inconclusive. I think that there will be performances that will come through, maybe not tonight either, but when we get into qualifying tomorrow, then teams saving tyres, tyre usage, and a brand new set of Pirelli tyres, I guarantee you, will transform your car and you will fly. Yeah. But you want to use those tyres when it's important, and that's in qualifying. Some cars have got 3 drivers, some cars have got 4 drivers, so you want to maximise your potential in qualifying. What we can do now is maybe a little bit of acclimatization for each of the drivers in each of the cars, get them accustomed to the racetrack in the current conditions. What is it now? Coming up to 4:15 in the afternoon at Spa-Francorchamps. Racetrack's dry, ambience good, track temperature not bad, side by side into the 5th lap, and are they side by side out? No, they're not. Well, probably wisely not.
Yeah, it was close, wasn't it? They're still hustling on. Mathieu Vazivière, who's had an Endurance Cup win already this year, and he's fighting with Jules Gounon in the Bentley. Qualifying comes up later on tonight, but then tomorrow we have that warm-up session and Super Pole. So the front of the grid is decided at the end of tomorrow, that regular element to the Total 24 Hours of Spa weekend. So the bulk of the grid will be decided tonight. The pointy end goes down to the shootout effectively tomorrow.
So, watching Jules Gounon just giving Max de Vivier a little bit of a workout, and I thought the Audi maybe didn't get the checkered flag when it came across the line the last time. I think maybe has the Bentley gone into the Bentley? Yes, it has gone into the pits.
Yeah.
So these are the cars at the tail of that line. So it must have been the Mercedes and the Ferrari that were amongst the first to take the checkered flag, and these are the tail end of that final lap.
So flag out. It takes a while, of course, for 56 cars to conclude the session, but BMW sitting at the top. There's the quickest car for Valkenhorst. Philipp Eng took it over. Augusto Farfus did the time. Philipp Eng, who made a name for himself really by winning Carrera Cup Germany and Porsche Super Cup, but then gravitated to GT racing, not with Porsche, but for BMW. I know the session is over, so I can't gauge from that shot who's going flat out or not, but the BMW seems to gobble up the road.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to say. That just look at the way Philipp Eng was able to pull out and just pass the Audi up the hill. Now, of course, not everybody having taken the flag is coming back on a flying lap. The reason drivers will go at this pace coming back in is they want to give their team accurate tyre information. They want to know what the pressures are. Quite often in the past, the driver would take a checkered flag and then he would sort of get his breath, catch his breath, maybe catch her breath on some occasions, on the lap in. So when they got on the pit lane, they weren't panting like a Labrador.
So there you've got Philippe Eng making his way back to the pit lane. The stewards have been quite busy thus far. Kamui Kobayashi, John, has been done for exceeding the pit lane speed limit. So Kobayashi has been done €50. The number 40 GPX Porsche, what was that one done for? Overtaking between turns 11 and 12 when the yellow flags are out. Thomas Preining. Now he has got 2 behavioural warning points for that. Remember, 3 and a grid drop. So Thomas Preining gets 2 BWPs. So for all sorts of reasons, things have been going on in that session. Quick run through the order then. Augusto Farfus did the time ahead of Timur Boguslavski to go top. Patrick Kuila third ahead of Andy Soucek, and then Davide Rigon fifth. Good sixth. Hardly touched on it, but Matthew Drudy, Patrick Niederhauser and Fred Vavish upholding Audi honour ahead of James Collado. Then Ricardo Feller ahead of the Müller-Engelhardt-Cairoli Porsche on the top 10. Another one that's gone under the radar thus far. Engel, Stolz, Avril for Mercedes. Now that is perhaps the top Mercedes when you take the drivers in combination. Dennis Lind 11th with Marco Mappelli and Andrea Caldarelli. 12th was the Martin Tomczyk, David Pittard BMW, the second of the Valkenhorst cars that they share with Nick Yellerly. Scroll further down and you'll see some, of course, with 3 drivers from the overall, but 4 if you're in Silver Pro-Am or Am. And lots of drivers to keep an eye to for the race. How about this? 28th only, Timo Bernhardt, Fred Makovici and Dennis Olsen. Only 29th, Lawrence Van Thor, Nick Tandy and Earl Bamber. So those are 2 Porsches that you can legitimately expect to hustle up the order come qualifying. What about Emil Frey Racing? We talked up number 163, but Costa, Altuve and Pereira only 31st in the times. And also 37th, last year's winner. So there's certainly more to come, is there not, from Richard Leeds, Michael Christensen and Kevin Estre. Tom Onslow Cole's Mercedes we saw at the start of the session, that finishes 41st. We heard from Taylor Proto, and he was 44th ahead of his teammates' car. Phil Keane, one of the guns in that. And that is the final page of the 56-strong entry. Daniel Karlvitz for Rinaldi in the Ferrari. I don't think did many laps because he will be much quicker than that in that car. Nick Homerson, Louis Macchiels, Andrea Bertolini, Daniel Serra, we know had a problem because the car brought out the red flag, and it's the Marco Seefried, Michael Jus, Dimitris Konstantinou and Jürgen Hering Porsche at the foot of the times. Hashtag Spa248 if you want to get in touch. The GT World Challenge Europe and the Total 24 Hours of Spa and the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli all over Twitter at the moment. Look at the highlights of that session. You see the Barwell 77 Lamborghini, Porsches fast and slow getting themselves excited. But then Andrea Bertolini had to limp number 52 Ferrari back to the pit lane. 1 or 2 drivers at the so-called Speaker's Corner exploring all of the track limits and then some as the orange one FFF Lamborghini bounced wide. The BMW Art car, replicating John Watson's t-shirt, that bounced over the curb, but others were perhaps even more cavalier about it, running way, way wide. Number 26 Audi, another one hustling on the Sansalot Junior team car. Pit stop cycle through. Patrick Kuyan took over 78 Lamborghini, blasted back out into the session. But at the end of it, it was all about BMW. There was Chris Froggatt going wide at Blanchimont, but BMW topping the times thanks to that black car, Augusto Farfus, at the wheel for Valkenhorst. Now remember, we will have qualifying coming up. It'll start at 5 minutes to 7 local time. We're an hour ahead here of the UK, so 5 to 7 local time for the qualifying session for the Total 24 Hours of Spa. Join us for that if you can. From Gemma Scott in the pits, John Watson and David Addison, it's goodbye for now.